Is it live? Yes, it says we're live. Look at that. Amazing. People can hear me, I hope. And Laura is busy monitoring and making sure everything works. You may hear a barking in the background. That's my CFO, my Chief Furry Officer. She turns 10 months old tomorrow, I think. And she is full of beans. It's a beautiful warm day and might be doing some running around outside. So apologies for barking dog. If it's too distracting, I'm sure everybody will let me know. Thanks for being here with me. We're going to be talking about having fun and why that's very important for your team. So looking forward to discussing that with you at length. So Laura usually helps me introduce everybody to the Squirrel Squadron, which is my community of tech and non-tech people. We're learning together. We're showing each other great new practices. I was just having a great discussion with Nigel in the community on the forum. We were discussing what it means to be data-driven and how sometimes being data-driven is dumb. And Nigel pointed out that, if you've got a scale from 1 to 10, maybe that's too precise. Maybe it's really just a choice of good or bad. And that's the sort of thing that I think a lot of folks don't consider when they're making IT purchases and IT plans and deciding what technology to use. So that's the kind of insight that we get from the Squirrel Squadron. That came in on the forum, which is all of this stuff is free, by the way. It's my way of giving back. And our forum is where we have 3,000 people from around the world commenting and discussing and asking each other great questions. These are all executives who are members of the squadron. So very glad to have those folks with us and discussing in the forum. We also have live events every week or almost every week. So there's a scrolling list down below. I can never keep track of quite how many we've got, but I do know that we have a discussion coming up soon on why Christmas is not a deadline and what you can do about that. Far, far too many of my clients set ridiculous deadlines that have no relationship to reality. And what I'd much rather people did is that they could see what their tech team was doing very, very frequently. I was talking with one this morning about opening up the black box, right? What's in that tech team? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? And how to do that? We don't need artificial deadlines. It is very helpful to share real deadlines, which come from the real world. And we can talk about that more. I'll tell you what, it's not fun to chase an artificial deadline that was just made up by some executive in order to crack the whip. But it's a lot more fun to chase a real deadline and say, we got this done. I remember I had a client who needed to get something finished for one of their clients' events where they were going to ride bicycles up to the top of a mountain. Their client was a bicycle company, and they were going to ride the bicycles up and then launch a new exciting thing that my client was producing. And they worked and worked and worked, and they had a lot of fun getting there, and they sort of climbed the mountain, and they got there, and then the client wasn't ready. But that was another story. The great thing that was fun for the team, it was motivational and helped them to be creative and really effective, was that they had a real deadline. This event was really going to happen. Real cyclists were going to ride to the top of a mountain to be excited by this new brilliant thing. I think they did it on the next weekend. Maybe it rained. I don't remember. Something went wrong, so they couldn't do it on the day. But it was a real deadline. It was a thing that was really going to happen that was exciting for them. And that's fun, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is why fun is really important in motivating a tech team or really any team. So I'm going to tell a few stories about fun. Laura, thanks for the scrolling bit at the bottom. That's very helpful that you put that together for me every time. I didn't even remember to remind you, and you did it. That's great. I hope you have. My video has disappeared for a second. Laura, wave at me if there's a problem, but I hope this is all going through okay. I will, Laura can tell me if there's a problem. So I'm going to assume everything's working and carry on. If we miss something, I'll go back to it. Oh, I know something important I forgot to say, which is all of you are watching this, and there's lots of you around. Please feel free to ask questions. So first of all, I'd like to know what your experience of fun is. Are you having fun at work? Is that something you want more of? Or you say, I don't have any, and I'd like to have some fun. I have some examples of that as well. What's your experience of fun at the moment? Please share that in the chat so I can make sure to tune to what's interesting to you. Are you wanting to improve what you have? Are you wanting to introduce some fun? Are you saying fun sucks? I'm Scrooge. I don't want people to have fun. what's the position for you? That would be very helpful to know. And we have some folks, of course, watching on the recording, and they've sent me a few questions ahead. So between the questions you guys send me on all the different platforms, whatever platform you're on and watching us on, and the ones we have in the can, I'm sure we'll have some very good stuff coming in. Right. So let me start with a few examples of having fun. So I remember going to a client early in my consulting life. I've worked with about 400 these days. And this client had some salespeople who were upstairs and some engineers who were on the next floor down. And at some moment, I heard this rhythmic thrumming. It was boom, 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 boom. And I went around to the engineers. I said, "Is that distracting? Does that bother you?" And they said, "Well, not really. We're kind of used to it." I said, "What is it? Is it like a broken fan? Is it some piece of equipment that's not working? Is it somebody knocking on the door? What is this?" And they said, No. That's the salespeople. And if you listen real carefully, you can hear their gong as well, because apparently they had a giant gong in the corner. I went up and saw it once I understood this. And they'd hit the gong, and it would go dong, 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 and they'd drum on their desks, which is what we could hear one floor down. And they were celebrating, of course, a big new sale. That was a lot of fun for them. Now, it was a little confusing for the engineers who didn't quite think in the way that salespeople do, but that was a real signal that those salespeople were getting a lot out of what they were doing. It was exciting for them. It caused a sense of camaraderie and celebration and excitement, because it might be one person's sale, but everybody was celebrating. And that's a really good example of type 1 fun. And we're going to talk about a couple different types of fun. And if you're interested in more on this, Jeffrey, my co-author, and I did a podcast episode on this not long ago, which inspired this longer live stream. But type 1 fun is fun while you're having it. You're like, man, this is a blast to do. I'm having a super time. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. This is really pleasurable, what I'm doing. Now, that type of fun is pretty easy to identify. And in this case, it was serving the business. It was helping the company to have fun. And by having this celebration, they were reinforcing the message: big sales are important. We should pay attention to them. This person has done well. It was not negative about anybody. It wasn't, you didn't sell. It was, hey, come on and drum on the desk with us. Let's have fun celebrating this big, exciting sale. So that's a positive example of type 1 fun. Now, there are negative examples of type 1 fun. So it's fun while you're having it, but it's actually not helping the company. And I'm sure all of you have been involved in these kinds of things. I remember, I will make sure this client remains completely nameless, but there was a client who fairly regularly would hold wild parties. And they would bring everybody into their office, which was in a kind of rundown building with a few neighbors around, but it was kind of an industrial building. And they would have loud music and DJs, and they would have lots of stuff to drink that might make you a little silly. And they had a sauna. And I don't know what happened in the sauna that night, but it was the next day. Quite a wild event. About broken glass and other things. Now, I was a consultant. I stayed out of the way of this. I went home before this. I was not interested in this particular type of fun. But from all accounts, this was a wild party and loads of fun, and everybody had a blast. It didn't help the company particularly. It unlike the sales event, it wasn't tied to some business outcome. It wasn't driving some activity. At most, it was a perk. It was a kind of a nice thing you can have, which is not related to the business. It's just, you've done a good job. Here's something nice. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's not my topic today. So I'm not going to tell you about how to have fun parties or plan your Christmas event or, what kind of bonus structure to have. Because all those things are real good, but they're not actually driving insane profits for your company, typically. And to stick around in a company because it has great parties. People can go to great somewhere else. So that's a type of type 1 fun. It's fun while you're having it. It's fun afterward. It's fun in all respects, but it's actually not serving the company's interests. So that's a different type of fun. Now there's another type, and by the way, there's an article, we linked it in the episode. Maybe Laura will include it in our follow-up, so you can read it if you want. But there's this typology of fun, and you might be thinking, Squirrel, there's only one type of fun. I know what you're talking about. I go play with my kids. I swim in the ocean. I do whatever it is, and that's fun. It's fun while I'm having it. What's this other type of fun? Well, the other type of fun is type 2 fun, no surprise, and it's fun after the fact, but it's not fun while you're doing it. And my favorite example of that is when I used to go backpacking in the Pacific Northwest. I went to university, same place as Steve Jobs in Portland, Oregon, and beautiful mountains around. And so I would go backpacking with friends. And it really hurt. You put a multi-pound pack on your back and you go climb up a mountain. It does not feel very good while you are doing it. But man, you get an incredible view when you get up there, and it's very quiet, and you can see the stars and the Milky Way, and there's lots of rewards after the fact. And it's great to remember. I remember it still 30 years later, how much fun that was, how I enjoyed it, how I benefited from it. I really should do it again because I'm getting too thick in the middle here. I need a little bit less squirrel on the scale. But the key thing is that you go through some difficult time, often shared with other people, and you have a positive result in the long term. And that often can be more rewarding fun. Now, the question that I always ask people is, are you having fun? And when I reflected on this after doing the podcast with Jeffrey, I really mean type 2 fun most of the time. So, for example, I do lots of due diligence work. I investigate technology teams, and I help them and explain to them what they could do better, and explain to the investors and the management in non-technical language, here's what this tech team needs in order to deal with the problems you see, and here's what they're doing well, and you should help them to do more of it. And, I did one of those and was reviewing it today, and almost everything was red. I was giving the team a really hard time. But the person I did it with, I always bring someone with me to get another perspective and get some help with the process. That person, I asked afterwards, as I always do with all the people on my panel who helped me with this, I said, are you having fun? And he said, absolutely. Because we learned a lot about this industry, about the issues these people had. It was really interesting to figure out what solutions they could come up with and find a way to craft that in non-technical language to explain where the difficulties were and what they could do. And we really thought the company had great potential. They just needed to deal with a few very urgent issues in order to get back on track. And that's type 2 fun, because it's a slog to get through, and you get a lot of complaints from people, and you get different perspectives, and you have to really think about it and understand who's telling the truth and who's misleading themselves and so on. But you really get a tremendous reward. And, I really think we did a great job for the leadership of that company and for the people in the teams, not all of whom appreciate all of the nuances. And we were able to shed a light on that, open the black box, as one of them said to me earlier today. So that is a type 2 kind of fun. And startups have this kind of fun often, that they'll work real hard and they'll get to the conference, or they'll get to the big customer presentation or something, and they're staying up real late and they're working their butts off, and they get to some great result. And it's not necessarily fun while you're doing it, but it is really rewarding afterwards. And I'll just give you one more example that came to my mind, which is I've always said that ThoughtWorks, which is a consultancy in the IT area, is a great company to be from. Because when I meet people who have been at ThoughtWorks, they uniformly are brilliant and thoughtful and have tremendous experiences from ThoughtWorks, which they draw on. ThoughtWorks works around the world. They do some really cutting edge practices. Shouldn't be cutting edge because they're 20 years old now, but things like pairing and unit testing and really effective tools that help tech teams be super productive. And they bring those to their clients and help them be very effective. So, ThoughtWorks has a stellar reputation. However, most of the people who have been at ThoughtWorks have terrible stories about actually being there. And they say, oh, it was so painful. And we had to work with this terrible client. And it was way off in this distant place that was far from my family. And I didn't have the support I needed. And the client didn't appreciate it. And these things were difficult. They tell a lot of stories of difficulties and challenges and problems along the way to having the kinds of results that ThoughtWorks typically gets. Because ThoughtWorks goes into difficult situations and tries to fix them and help people with really hard problems. And, so kudos to them for doing that. I suspect there are some ways they could manage their organization better, but I haven't worked with them. They want to be a client, get in touch, I can help you. But the point is that ThoughtWorks, in my observation, is a place where you have a lot of type 2 fun. And when you come out, you have great experiences, you have real knowledge that you can draw on, but it's not necessarily fun to be there at the time. And so one of the things I hope you take away from this is this notion that there can be fun that is fun at the time and fun that can be fun afterwards. And both of these are important. I would be very worried if after one of my due diligences, I asked, are you having fun? And the person that was working with me said, no. That hasn't happened, actually. But I really encouraged them, and I dig in and say, are you really sure? Was this fun for you? Did you learn? Did you benefit? Was this something you wanted to do? And they have consistently said, yes. That's great, but I would learn even more from someone who said, I'm not having fun. And so one thing that all of you watching and listening could do is to ask your teams, whatever team they are. It could be that sales team drumming on the desks. It could be a technology team that's just finished a big milestone. Was that fun? And if the answer is no, you might introduce the idea of type 2 fun. Was it type 2 fun? Because often it will be. If it's neither type 1 nor type 2, I was reading somewhere somebody invented a type 3, which is just not fun at all. I don't think that's a very useful idea. But if it's not fun in either sense, then you've got a problem. And I want to expound a little bit more on why a team that isn't having fun is almost certainly not going to be as creative or productive as you'd like them to be. So I love questions, by the way, so feel free to put more in, like that people comment with their issues and problems. I'll try to weave those in when I see them. But if you have questions or disagreements, or you say, wait a minute, I think fun is not good. I'm a Calvinist. The Calvinists were great on saying people shouldn't have fun. They should work hard. Here in England, we exported a lot of those to the United States. So maybe there's some Americans watching who will say, yeah, I'm a Puritan. I'd like not to have fun. That would be really interesting. So whatever your thoughts are, please put them in the chat. I'm happy to respond, and I'll collect those up with the ones we got ahead of time and answer some a little later. Right. Okay. It's very hot here in England, so I'm going to need to eat a lot or drink a lot to keep my voice going. So what I want to introduce to you is the notion of fun being an unlocker for creativity. And there are two sources for that I'll cite. One, I'll ask Laura to help me remember to put in the follow-up email in the forum post. If we forget, by all means, ask me. Very easy. Or you can do a Google search. There's a wonderful lecture on creativity by a person you might not think of as being a source of lectures, because the main kinds of lectures he is famous for giving are humorous lectures that are about 2 minutes long as part of comedy sketches. His name is John Cleese. You probably know him. If you don't know him, you know his face from the Monty Python troupe, but from many other movies and TV programs and so on. And so in a very serious environment, with a suit and behind a lectern and so on, you think he's going to do the Ministry of Silly Walks or something. But when you watch this video on the open and closed mode and creativity, he's talking very seriously, but then he breaks it and he starts telling light bulb jokes. And of course, being a great comedian, he tells them very well. So I will invite you to enjoy the light bulb jokes. I'll give you the version without the jokes because I'm not a comedian. But what Cleese talks about is how the Pythons came up with very silly things, like the Ministry of Silly Walks, like the football match between the Greek philosophers and the Roman philosophers. I forget what the German philosophers. Anyway, the silly and humorous and entertaining things that we all know and love, like the Dead Parrot sketch and so on. How did they think this stuff up? That's really the question he's answering. And what he says is very interesting in light of this concept of fun, and in light of how we want our salespeople and our customer service people and our tech people to be creative and to come up with innovative ideas. He says, well, most of us operate most of the time in the closed mode. And in the closed mode, it's very useful. It's very good. If you want to drive a car, you better be closed. You don't want to be open to the idea that the car might fly. That's not where you want to be. You want to be interested in the car going straight and not turning off in some direction of its own, or fantasies about how the car might turn into a horse. You want to be focused on what's actually happening and whether the car is going to hit anything. That's how you keep your car safe. So the closed mode is really useful, but it's terrible for creativity, because in the closed mode, you're really only thinking about what's in front of you, what's going to happen next, what the normal course of events is, and you're not being very creative. And you're not having fun in either sense, right? There might be a lot of fun involved in driving a car, but the mechanical action of driving a car is not the fun part. The fun part might be the wind blowing through your hair, or having a person of your persuasion sitting next to you having a wonderful time. There might be elements of the driving that are enjoyable in that way, The mechanical driving of the car and not hitting stuff, not really that much fun. That's a job. Then, of course, people get paid to do that job. And they get paid because it's not fun, right? But if you can get into the open mode, and the open mode is one in which you wouldn't be very good at driving a car, but you would be good at writing a Monty Python sketch. And in that mode, you are open to lots of new and interesting and clever ideas because you're playing. If you want to see the open mode in operation, find a nearby 3-year-old and give them some blocks and watch them go. Because that's the way they operate. The block can turn into an airplane or a fish or their friend. They can have a conversation with the block. They can throw the block at you. They have all kinds of creative ways of interacting with their toys. And that's what kids are good at. That's what they do. And what Cleese points out is that the places where the Pythons really didn't succeed, where they'd write a sketch and it was just terrible and they had to throw it away, were where they were in the closed mode. And they'd say, oh, man, we got to come up with something. We're under the pressure. We got to do it. What's our process? What's our first step? What's our second step? And when they did that, they were in the closed mode. They didn't get anywhere. But when they relaxed and had fun and they were playing and they were entertaining ideas that were creative and new and different and riffing on different inputs and coming up with different ways of engaging, the way you want your salespeople to come up with, an amazing analogy to put on slide 3, or the way you want your customer service people to come up with a different type of training or a better way to kind of assure, then you want to be able to get your people into the open mode. They will not go into the open mode. So the most important thing to understand about fun, that it unlocks capacities that people have. And that's this notion of the open and closed mode. I'll let you watch Cleese, who's much more eloquent on this and has lots of research. We'll make sure to link to that one. But I want to point out another place where having fun, being creative, coming up with new ideas is very important in a completely different sphere. And that is if you're going to have a difficult conversation. Now, I have a client who phoned me this afternoon, and they said, oh, Squirrel, I'm going to have this difficult conversation. I have to tell this person they're really performing poorly and they're alienating everyone else in the business. And I'm just so worried about this. How am I going to approach it? I'm going to put it on the table and, I might get fired for it, but I'm going to tell them. And I said, hang on a minute. That doesn't sound like fun. And he said, yeah, of course this isn't going to be fun. I said, well, maybe it could be type 2 fun. It's unlikely to be type 1 fun. That's unlikely to be like a swim or a cruise or a skiing down a hill. But it could be like climbing a mountain. And therefore, you could look for some ways that it could be enjoyable. He said, well, what are those? And I introduced him to an idea called coherence busting. Now, this is one Jeffrey Frederick came up with and I named, and we put it in our book, Agile Conversations. So if you want a copy of that, just write me. We can figure out how to get you one. But I'll tell you briefly what this idea of coherence busting is. You're going into one of those difficult conversations. You might have to give feedback to somebody who works for you. You might have to talk to a client about raising prices. You might need to correct someone who is their performance in their team is poor, and you want them to improve how the team works. Could be lots of situations where you might be annoyed with someone who behaved poorly with you in a meeting yesterday. Any of those difficult conversations is going to be made better if you can relax and play a little bit. Think of John Cleese, coming up with Monty Python sketches. And how you do that is you come up with different explanations for the behavior. So, for example, in the case where my client phoned me this afternoon, the difficult person is really just alienating other people, just behaving in a way that does not make them very happy. And so I said, let's think of some different reasons why that might happen. And the sillier the reason, the better. Think of dead parrots and silly walks and things, right? You're trying to unlock that open mode so you can think about the reasons for the person's behavior in a new way. And when you do that, you're more curious. And when you're more curious, you're open to finding out something that's probably not silly, but very useful. Let me give an example, this particular example. So, for example, the person who is alienating others might have been abducted by aliens. And the aliens implanted a probe into this person and gave him instructions to be as annoying as possible because they're trying to take over the earth. Now, that's pretty silly. You might be smiling as you hear that. And you say, oh, Squirrel, that's not very likely that your clients have been affected by alien invasion. And you're right. But it's silly. And what it does neurologically is change how your brain is operating. You can go read a book called Thinking Fast and Slow about System 1 and System 2. The psychiatrists have put people in MRI scanners to check out which parts of their brain light up. And in this more open mode, when you're operating with System 2 is the fancy name, their eyes dilate differently. Their different parts of their brain operate that don't operate when they're in the closed mode in System 1, and they're operating on kind of automatic mode. And they are more creative. They come up with different ideas. And so if you could get yourself laughing, it's kind of inconsistent with the mode you're probably in, which is, oh my God, this person could make me angry and I'm angry with them. Boy, they really hate me and I think I know what's happening and I know why they're alienating people. Instead, you go in thinking, well, it could be aliens. And you might come up with some other silly examples. Jeffrey likes to use, an evil supervillain. This person is actually working for a competitor. They're sitting in their lair, stroking their cat, and figuring out how to take over your company and ruin it. And so that's where their motive comes from. Or they have really got a negative experience in their past with someone whose name was similar to yours, and so they're alienating you. You could come up with all kinds of examples like this. The point of coherence busting is to put yourself in that open mode. What are the reasons for this person behaving in the way they are? And how could I undermine my automatic assumptions about it? If you do that, you will be in fun mode. It's kind of fun to think up these different explanations. And you will be much more creative. You'll be able to come up with counterfactual, surprising situations and explanations for other people's behavior. And that's really useful to be able to do. It defuses some of the anticipation, the anxiety you might have, and it helps you to have a better dialogue with the person. So there's a case where, in two different ways, we can think about type 2 fun, at least, if not type 1 fun, is really valuable for lighting up different parts of your brain. And if you could unlock that in your tech team, if you could unlock that in your salespeople, what would that mean for you if they could be much more creative? I suspect that would mean a lot more profit for you. And that's how I always tie these things back. I want to know, is the fun I'm giving, is it just a perk, right? Am I setting up, a roller derby experience, or people are going to go watch people play some ball game or something? That's a nice perk, but it doesn't unlock new parts of people's brains. It doesn't help them think differently. It doesn't help them operate differently at work. I'd rather get that from my investment in employee fun. So that's where I'd encourage you to go. Right, let me turn to some questions, because we've had some coming in, and I have some in my page up here, but it's on my other screen, so give me a second to find it. Sorry, everybody talk amongst yourselves while I find exactly where this is on the wrong screen. But there I go, I've got it. Super. So Christopher asks, a great question. Thank you, Christopher. What do you do when there's so much tension and drama on the team that no one feels safe having fun together? All right, Christian, I know this one very well, and I have a couple clients in exactly this situation. So you are not alone, Christopher. Let me think about how exactly to give Christopher some guidance. Certainly, what I would want to do is understand the source of the tension and drama. If there's resentment between individuals, if there's a lack of resource, there's something that's missing, the team needs a skill, or the team needs something that they're being pushed to do but they don't have, what is the source of that tension and drama? And then if there's that much tension and drama, removing it may be very difficult. It may be hard to go in and say, all right, well, you guys all be friends now and have fun and relax together. This is often what goes wrong in sort of setting up perks for people. They say, great, we're all going to go race go-karts together. Well, I don't like you very much. I don't want to be in a go-kart with you. I don't want to be in a race with you. I want to be as far from you as possible. I think that might be the sort of thing Christopher has in mind when he says there's so much tension and drama they can't have fun. When that happens, what you're not going to do is get by it by trying to have type 1 fun and saying, all right, let's all just go do a thing that's fun together. It's a perk. We're just going to be doing it together so we can get closer together. These folks don't want to get closer together. They're having tension and drama. Instead, I would look for ways for them to cooperate, maybe in smaller groups, which is a little easier, and have some type 2 fun. What can we produce that's valuable And maybe I have to kind of suck my teeth and get on with this person. And I don't like them very much, and it's pretty painful. But man, I got to a great result. And I have found that diffuses much better than sending everybody off to a beach holiday or to have a bonfire on the top of a nearby hill or something like that. Those kind of fun perk kind of things don't seem to produce much lasting value. Whereas if you can get those folks to cooperate, it may be painful, it may be difficult. They may resist you and say, no, Christopher, I don't want to participate. I don't want to cooperate. I want to be angry with the other person. There's lots of things we can do about that. But if you can get those folks collaborating, that's a big if, then you can get some, you can start to get some type 2 fun underway. I hope that's helpful for Christopher. Feel free for any of these to pipe back up and say, hey, wait a minute, you misunderstood my question. Anything like that is very welcome. Let's see. Okay. Isabel always has good questions. She has a very good one here. How can we make compliance the new sexy for squads that keep the product up and running in maintenance sustainability mode? Okay, yeah, so this is, I'm going to generalize a little bit, Isabel, but I'll come back to your specific case, which is entertaining and very realistic. So when a team has something new to do, they've been doing something for a while, in Isabel's case, probably building this new product and making it ready and making sure people know how to use it and documenting it and so on. What do we do in order to help them switch gears and go into a new mode of working, which may be less fun? They really enjoy the creativity, the challenge, the artistry of building something new. Suddenly what you're saying to them is keep it running. Just do the same thing, turn the crank again. Let's make more money from this particular item that we've created. And that's tough because it may not be fun. And I think sugarcoating it is not going to help. If you just say, hey, isn't this fun? People look at each other and say, he's nuts. I'm not listening. This erodes confidence rather than creating it, removes the open mode rather than elucidating it and helping it to flourish. So, Isabel, what I would rather say in your particular case is not how do we make compliance sexy? It's probably not going to be sexy. But how can we identify compliance or maintenance as type 2 fun? It may be, for example, that the team was having type 1 fun before. It was fun all the way through. They could experiment. They could try new stuff. All of a sudden, they have real customers. Site goes down. They're unhappy. Well, this is inconvenient. This isn't quite what I want to do. If you give them the opportunity to have type 2 fun and get to a result, climb the mountain, get to an improvement, version 2 that sells 50% better, then you have a very different experience for them. Now, some people are still going to say, I liked the old thing. That was better. I liked building it from scratch. I like doing that kind of innovation and invention, and I don't want to turn the crank and maintain. Well, okay, you're going to lose some people whenever you go from the one to the other. I would say a common experience for this, if you look on links on Coding Horror, that's a place where the author has written a bunch about this. These are people who are going from being commandos who can kind of do whatever they feel like, break all the rules, have a great new, wonderful, creative ideas. And you're asking them to be infantry and to salute and to say, yes, officer, I'm going to do what you say. I'm going to follow the rules of war. And they say, man, I just want to parachute in behind the lines. There are folks like that who just need to go somewhere else because they are not going to be happy in a compliance environment. But typically what you have is people kind of negotiating the switch, right? They're going from asphalt to dirt. They're going from one surface to another that they're operating on. And they say, oh, this is uncomfortable. I liked it back there. Can we go back to that way of working? If you can point them at the outcome and give them probably quite frequent milestones and examples of, hey, that delivery you made last week, that won us one new client. But previously we had no clients. Now we have one every week, thanks to these great things that you're doing on a regular basis to maintain and extend what you've built. The ones who are ready to be infantry will be responsive to that, I predict. So Isabel, I'd be interested in what you see. There are some who will be commandos at heart, and they need to go to either a commando project you have, or they need to leave and go to another organization that operates that way. Isabel, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to do one more question and then jump in. Oh, Leonard says, how to keep up the fun in remote team settings. So, we're all sitting somewhere and far away from each other, and you're listening to me, which I appreciate. And I hope that we're having some fun. So, Leonard, one example is look at what we're doing here. I hope that you're having fun listening to this. I'm telling you some stories that are entertaining or valuable. I'm certainly having a blast because I'm getting some learning here. I'm organizing some thoughts. I'm hearing stimulating questions from you, like Leonard's question about remote working. Those are examples of fun that we are having right now. So for some of you, maybe type 2 fun. You're like, oh man, I'm not enjoying this. I'm having to think carefully about my team and whether they're productive and how I could get them into the open mode. For others of you, maybe type 1 fun. You're saying, boy, I like listening to this. This is helping me. The people who aren't having fun, I hope they've gone and watched, Mr. Beast or something. So don't stick around if you're not having fun at a squirrel stream, but certainly. But the point for Leonard is it's not all that different from fun in a in-person setting. What you can't have is some of the types of type 1 fun that we have. So you can't take the team bowling virtually. I mean, maybe you could. I remember I had a team that would regularly meet after work to play Call of Duty together. Now, that was in a time when we were all in the same office and they liked having fast computers so they could all shoot each other very much. And you might do it remotely now. But whatever it might be, whether you want to shoot people or what is it? There's the Animal Crossing and you meet their animals on your island, whatever it might be. There are lots of different things that you could do that bring the team together and probably create type 1 fun. But as I've been saying throughout, there's type 2 fun. There's the fun that is perhaps painful at the time, but really produces a fantastic outcome, and you feel good about it afterwards. That's just the same in remote as in-person environments, because it involves much less bowling and knocking over pins and throwing balls at each other or shooting bullets at each other. It involves much more collaboration, difficult conversations, figuring out ways to produce successful products. Those are investments that people can make that turn into fun. One of the tricks is, of course, you want to make sure, I was saying this to Isabel, that fun comes frequently. Because if you just say, hey, climb Mount Everest, let's start here at ground zero, I'll see you at the top, then you're not going to sort of have the reinforcement that, yeah, remember, this is fun. I'm having a good time getting up here to the top of Everest. If you can have some peaks along the way, some base camps and some things where people get a chance to say and reflect, boy, it was really fun to get this far. I want to go further. That can be really effective. So, Leonard, I'd say that was even more important in a remote environment because the reinforcement isn't there day to day. You're not seeing the person at the water cooler and saying, great job. You might need to specially plan for that. I'd say that's really the only difference for type 2 fun. Type 1 fun, you just need to adapt to the fact that people are remote. Type 2, you need to create structures and models for it. Ask more questions about that if you'd like to know more, but that was a fantastic question. All right, I'm going to switch back to some of my prepared remarks. So I hope those were helpful. Comment and let me know if I'm missing something or I misunderstood your question. If you're watching this on the recording later, feel free to go to the forum and comment, or to write me an email. My email is on douglassquirrel.com and on the Squirrel Squadron, which is down there somewhere. So find me and comment and say, Squirrel, you were wrong, or I disagreed. That's always very helpful to hear, either live here, even better, or if you're watching on the recording sometime later. So I want to give you just one more example of types of fun, which relates back to, I forget who asked, but someone was asking about drama and tension. And there's a type of drama that is kind of type 0 fun. It's kind of not fun at all. And but people seem to engage in it because either they're bored or that they just feel that that's what they need to do, or maybe just because they see it a lot on television. So if you watch most television programs, there'll be some drama at some point. Somebody wants X and somebody else wants Y. The superhero wants to save the world and the evil villain wants to take over the world, and they have some conflict. And typically that, often in television programs, that might involve violence, or it might involve some kind of emotional charged experience. Somebody's crying and storming out, or whatever might be happening. If that didn't happen, if you just watched a teleprogram that was about somebody's typical day where nothing interesting happened, that wouldn't be much of a teleprogram. That would get canceled pretty quick. Even things that purport to be reality television, right? They're highly scripted and they have dramatic moments, and that's what they show you because that's what's exciting. That's what gets you interested. However, it's often not very much fun in either sense. Certainly the people who are having the conflict or the difficulty or battling with each other, they're not really having a lot of fun. and they tend just to try to win. It's a win-lose situation. I'm going to save the world. No, I'm going to take over the world. Somebody has to win. Well, of course, the superhero wins, right? We wouldn't watch it otherwise. I want to save our family. I want to, go off and have a midlife crisis. The family has some kind of battle or difficulty. And it often gets resolved in a way that I find very unsatisfying, because somebody wins and somebody loses, and I feel bad for the loser. So there's a very interesting exception to this. And I know of this one example because I'm a geek. This is from Star Trek, so geek warning. Sorry about that. But it won't be technical. Don't worry. I won't be speaking any Klingon. I'm sure there are other examples, and I just don't happen to know them. But there is a teleprogram, not all Star Trek is like this, but one particular one from the 1990s called The Next Generation is about a captain named Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart, who's a brilliant Shakespearean actor. And there's a very interesting phenomenon that happens over and over and over again on this spaceship, where they're flying around and, shooting at aliens and doing all the normal spaceship stuff. But when they run into a difficulty, what Picard does not do is pull out his weapon, like in a Western, and start shooting. He doesn't, have a conflict in a battle and start yelling at his staff. He says, it's time for a meeting. And they troop off to a room, a very futuristic room with, stars going by as the spaceship flies. And they have a meeting. And in the meeting, there's quite a lot of drama. And it's type 2 drama. It's type 2 fun. And you'll have somebody who says, what we should do is invade the planet. We should take over and save the people. And this is the way we should do it. Somebody else says, that would violate the Prime Directive. We can't do that. We need to do this other thing. And there's a vigorous discussion and a resolution. And I think it's quite a good example. And it's unusual. It's surprising that the writers were able to make that a consistent element of the story. And it's one of the few examples that I think we have in popular culture that I know of, where the reaction to some kind of conflict or difficulty is type 2 fun. It's not, let's have a battle. And of course, there are eventually space battles, and it is Star Trek, and those things happen. But there is an element, there's a thread throughout all the episodes in which Picard gets people together to have a discussion, a difficult conversation, comes to some kind of resolution, may not make everybody happy, but if you look at it afterwards, the characters have grown, they've improved, and I would say they're having type 2 fun. And that's the thing I'd encourage you to do. And the person who asked about drama, sometimes people are creating drama because they're bored or because they've seen it on television. I think that's how a successful executive operates. If you watch the Pirates of Silicon Valley, or there's another one I can't remember, it might be called The Valley, I don't know, but these are kind of models of technology companies. There have been a bunch of others on Wolf of Wall Street, Margin Call, a bunch of different sort of business focused dramas. And they all are full of these unproductive drama. Jean-Luc Picard is nowhere to be seen. There's no calling a meeting and having a difficult discussion and coming to a conclusion. There's a lot of metaphorical, at least, shooting. And what I'd be interested in seeing is more people using those as models. And it's the sort of thing you can point out to your team. Hey, what we're not going to do is this unproductive, not fun activity. We're going to do this other activity, which is fun in this funny way. You're not going to enjoy it at the time, but you will find it valuable and rewarding afterward. And it will help you unlock your creativity and get into the open mode. So I'd encourage you to look for those opportunities to reduce drama in the kind of negative sense, but increase the drama of the type 2 fun. How could you collaboratively work together to solve the problem? Okay, I hope that's helpful. I'm going to look for just more questions because we had some. Let me see what those are. Dominic says, I love Dominic's complicated question here. Is there any data on how long is too long for a type 2 fun event before the pain of going through it tempers any future perception of it having been fun? How long, are you climbing Mount Everest and you say, well, wait a minute, I'm halfway up and that's too much. So Dominic, no surprise, I don't have any data on that. If you have some, I'd sure be interested. Share it here or on the forum. I'd be very interested, and if anybody could come up with that data, it might be you. You have a lot of insights in these areas, I know. So I'm curious about whether there is any data. But what I can tell you is, having worked with hundreds of companies, what you want is frequent reinforcement of the type 2 fun. If you wait too long, and too long is more than a couple days, it's not months and months and months. People can't just slog for that long and have type 2 fun. reliably and stick around. If you wait more than a few days to reinforce it and say, okay, we're all having type 2 fun, here's the value, here's a way of celebrating, those salespeople that I was telling about in the beginning, drumming on their desks, they were doing that pretty much every day. And that might even be for some relatively small sales, but when they got one that was big enough to be excited about, they got excited. And that was their reinforcement. Yes, we're selling, we're making progress, we're winning business, we're beating the competition, and look at us having a big celebration of that now. So anytime you can inject reinforcement of the type 2 fun, you should. And if you're waiting more than a few days, I think you're running the risk of having people fall off the type 2 fun bandwagon. I hope that's helpful. Justine says that someone Justine knows is stressed and stretched in a large corporation as a project manager. Deadlines, workload, hierarchies, very draining. Where can you look for fun in a situation like that? Well, the first answer is you may not be able to. Maybe you need a different situation. I don't know that company, so I can't tell you where the fun might lie in that company. But I can give you some sort of pointers on where to look for it. Whether you might be the manager of a team that's not having fun and is demoralized and needs to get more fun in their lives, or if you're a participant, as this person sounds like they are, and Justine wants to help them. So looking for fun in outcomes for people that you care about is one of my favorites. And maybe I'll concentrate on that one because we're a little low on time. So there are more examples, and Justine, if you want to ask for more, or anybody else, feel free. But let me concentrate on that one. Identify some people. Those are individual human beings. It's not some big amorphous mass. It's individuals you can name ideally. If you can't, you might need to come up with personas. I want to help Bob, the owner of a small pizza business. I want to help Jane, who has started a job search, and I want to help her find a fantastic job. Whatever it is that you might be doing, having names and faces and people to point to can be very helpful. And identify a way that what you're doing is helping them. And that can be not only motivational for you, but it can be a guide to what sorts of things you might do that will be more valuable to the business, and will be more valuable to Bob and Jane and whoever it is that you're trying to provide help to. I remember one example we had. This was when I was CTO of an e-commerce company. We sold half-price Louis Vuitton handbags and stuff like that. So we were very popular among a certain segment of the population. And at one point, the marketing folks held a focus group. And they showed, I was really pleased, they shared it with us engineers. I asked them to, and they were willing to show it to us so we could see what the types of people were motivated by. Why were they buying these? What made them want to? What made them excited? How could we help them further? And one of them said, I'll never forget this, she picked up her phone and she showed me her phone. She said, hey, look at this. She showed the person on the camera. I wasn't there, of course. I was watching on the video, but she said, what I need to be able to do is use your website on my phone. And she showed, moving her thumb up and down. And I need to be able to use it one-handed. And all of us engineers, we looked at each other and we said, she seems to have two arms. So there's nothing physically wrong here. We'd love to help disabled people, but the one-armed is not a major part of our client base. Why is she caring about being able to use it with one hand? And thankfully, one of the marketing people was also curious in the focus group and on the video, asked her and said, why one hand? We don't understand that. And she said, oh yeah, I'm holding the baby with the other hand. And then we got a real clear and visceral understanding of what her situation was. She was using our website in a busy environment, taking care of a tiny baby's full-time job, very difficult. And she was using it for entertainment, for value for her and her family. There were various things she could talk about. But we could all anchor it to the notion that she was carrying the baby, right? So she's a very overstretched person with a lot going on. And if we could make it a 5% easier for her, she'd buy more from us, good for us, and she'd have a better experience. And that would help her with her stressful, difficult situation, trying to take care of a baby and do 100 other things at once, which is often what people do who have small children. So if the person you're talking about there, Justine, I'm not sure who it is, the person that has this stressful situation, if they can look for individual humans and tie their work to those individual humans, then when they have type 2 fun, they can point to that. That's kind of like Everest. Then they might say, boy, it was a really tough day at work today, but I know that I have helped some people travel to see family members that they love, if you're in the travel industry. Or, I've helped some people to improve their retirement plan if you're in the finance industry. There could be lots of different things you can hook to. But if you can get that sense of climbing the mountain, getting to an outcome that matters to a human being, that is where I find most often you get the strongest motivation. And you need to renew that frequently. It sounds like this person's in a kind of difficult environment. Maybe there's not a lot of reinforcement of that. They may need to go look for it themselves. So you phone up some customers every couple of days and you say, what did our work do for you? Oh, we made it worse for you. Well, I'm very sorry. What could I do to make it better for you? Oh, this report really changed your life. It made a process that was painful and tedious 5 minutes and easy. I'm really glad to hear about that. Thank you. And then you share that, of course, with other people, so they also see the type 2 fun that you're getting by improving the report or the website or the app or whatever it might be. So, Justine, I hope that was a helpful idea about how to look for fun. And I really enjoyed your question. That was very, very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I think I've exhausted the questions and exhausted my voice a bit. It's so warm here that it's a little hard to keep talking. But I want to encourage you all to keep coming to these sessions. I really enjoy doing them, and I enjoy the feedback and back and forth with you. You ask wonderful questions, and we have lots more of those on the forum. So check that out on squirrelsquadron.com, wherever it is. I'd love to continue the discussion. And of course, we have lots of exciting events coming up, and you can sign up for those right down here. So I'd love to see you at more of those. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Great talking to you. I'll see you again next week.